Hi, I'm Keith Bergman, the Littleton Town Administrator, and I want to welcome you to this forum that is being sponsored by the Littleton Open Space and Recreation Planning process, which includes our consultant, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC, whose consultants we have working with us to complete the work ably begun by our Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee. And we appreciate all the effort that has gone into this. We're going to have two facilitated meetings where MAPC staff leads us in a community discussion that will lead to the completion of the Open Space and Recreation Plan. Tonight's focus is going to be on recreation needs. We're going to have another meeting. We have not established the date yet, but we'll get to that, to complete the work, integrate the issues of open space and recreation, and hopefully get the plan completed and then submitted to the state. Just as background, one of the reasons why we have an open space and recreation plan is so that we have the community's list of priorities for preservation and recreation purposes. It's a specific standalone plan that is subject to approval by a state agency, the Division of Conservation Services. But open space and recreation is also one of the components of the master plan. And we also have an active master plan update process right now. We have some members of our master plan steering committee with us tonight, and they are conducting a series of meetings. In fact, next Tuesday, June 23rd, there's a meeting that all town boards are welcome to attend to help shape the scope of what that master plan update is. And open space and recreation is an important component in that plan. Previously, we've worked with our MAPC consultants on other projects in Littleton. Most recently before this was updating the housing production plan, another standalone plan that was subject to approval by a state agency. The Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board unanimously submitted that housing production plan to the state. It was approved by the Department of Housing and Community Development. But the housing plan is also a component of the master plan. So it will find itself synthesized into that major document that we're working on. The purpose of tonight's forum is to make sure that the plan document reflects the needs of the community. And as I say, tonight we're focusing on recreation. And I'm happy to introduce, do I introduce Cynthia or Mark? Okay, I'm going to introduce Cynthia Wall of MAPC. Cynthia is here tonight with three other staff members from MAPC. Mark Rassicott in the front row, the Director of Land Use, Joan Blostein, and Tanya Palia in the back. So Mark and Cynthia have worked with us before on the Littleton Common Overlay District project, which resulted in the zoning amendments that were brought to the 2010 town meeting. We had them back working on some agricultural zoning stuff a couple of years ago that town meeting also approved, and we're happy. So they're no strangers to Littleton, and we're happy to have them back tonight to take us on this journey. So welcome.
Thank you, Keith, and good evening. Can you hear me? Good. Thank you all for coming. I know it's a lovely evening, and we hope that you will find our presentation worthwhile. We're really here to hear your ideas about recreation. The Metropolitan Area Planning Council serves 101 cities and towns in the greater Boston region, actually out as far as 495. We provide planning, transportation, environmental, collective purchasing services, and we work with the towns to implement the regional plan, Metro Future. As Keith mentioned, I am joined this evening by my colleagues, Mark Rassicott, who has worked in the community before. Joan Blaustein is our expert in open space planning for the agency, And Tanya Palya is a regional planner who is also the coordinator of the, let me get this right, we call it MAGIC, but who knows really, that is the Minuteman, thank you, Tanya, the Minuteman Advisory Group for Interlocal Coordination, which is one of our subregions, and it's the one that Littleton belongs in. So I should also mention that this project is funded through a grant called District Local Technical Assistance. Tonight, I'm going to provide a very brief context for the open space plan and discuss a few of the conclusions that came from the survey that the committee did. And then we really are going to have a two-part discussion. The first is going to ask you what you think the needs are for recreation. And then the second part will address where and how these needs might be met in the community. And then we'll have a brief recap with next steps. First of all, what do we mean really by recreation? Recreation is typically divided into two parts, if you will, active and passive. When people talk about facilities for active recreation, shorthand way to think of it is it's a facility with lines. Very often it's competitive. It can involve sports teams, something even like competitive swimming where the lines are marked off. Those are considered your ball games, that kind of thing, considered active recreation. Passive recreation, on the other hand, is usually outside and usually in a minimal sort of a disturbance, if you will, or very minimal kind of facilities, bird watching, kayaking, picnicking, ice skating, cross-country skiing, that kind of thing. So we're open to talking about all of those opportunities this evening. I want to acknowledge the hard work that really is the basis for why we are here, of the Open Space and Recreation Implementation Committee, chaired by Mr. Andrew Samarco, and his committee members. Would you all please raise your hands, the members who are here? They have drafted the plan, which needs a little bit of additional information, primarily maps that we are going to help them with, but they've really done a wonderful job in capturing exactly, this is requirements are put out by the state, so they had to follow a lot of requirements, and they've done a wonderful job with this, but including the survey, and I'm going to discuss that in a minute. But the reason that you need a plan is so that the town can apply for various grant programs administered by the state. And if you don't have a plan, if you don't have an approved open space and recreation plan, you're not eligible even to apply. So this is very important for the community. I'm going to present a little bit of demographic information, and the reason I'm doing that is so that you can sort of see the trends that we project. These are MAPC projections for the future, so that you can be sure and include all different components or elements in your community as you think about open space recreation activities. These next two slides actually are from work we did for your housing production plan. So these are brand new, and you have probably seen these before. 9% increase in your population between 2000 and 2010. And you can actually, this chart actually goes back to 1990, 2000, 2010. 36% of your households have children. And your school enrollment, not shown on this, but we know this from data that we gathered, has been steady since 2005. So definitely a family community, but rather steady with the number of families or with the number of school children. This slide is really interesting. at least to those of us in the planning field, look what's happening. And these are projections that MAPC does for every community. Now, not unlike almost every community in our 101 area, 101 town, city area, look what's happening. Look what we project to be happening in 2030. Huge increases in the elderly population, 240% between people between 65 and 74. Decrease in the younger age cohorts. And I don't know whether you can actually see the numbers here. That's why we put them in a chart form. But a change from 2000 to 2030, 246 fewer children, 1 to 4, 300 fewer school-age children, a drop of 18%. That's quite substantial. Meanwhile, 90% increase in the older generations. But the good news is we're staying healthier longer. So we do want some nice facilities, maybe more on the passive side. But definitely you need to be considering that age group. And while there's a drop in the younger group, there's still going to be people playing ball and having these activities. So it's not to say that ought to go away at all. We just wanted you to have a picture of what we think the projection of the future will hold. The committee that we just recognized did a survey. They did it about a year ago. And it's very interesting what they discovered in their survey. The blue is the first priority. They asked people to rank activities, to suggest activities, and the blue were the first priorities. So you can see trails and bike paths, very desirable among the people who responded. That's the first priority. The red is their second priority, so another, I believe, 30 people. So you can see how important trails, bike paths, recreation center community, and down the line, tennis courts, ice rink, dog park. So that just gives a little snapshot of what people have already been thinking about for recreation facilities. They also asked, let me give you the exact question. The survey question asked, it was number 7, how satisfied are you with the places for children and youth to play and recreate in Littleton? 5 being the most satisfied and 1 being the least satisfied. So the respondents, pretty happy, pretty satisfied. A few people, not so much. So this is the highest, that ranking of 5, and this is the number of people who responded. I think now I'm going to turn it over to Mark Rassicott, who's going to lead a facilitated discussion on needs for the community.
Thank you, Cynthia. Tanya, could we put the lights back up? Again, thank you for coming out tonight. Hopefully, we'll have a good discussion, get right to it, and hopefully we'll have you home by 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock. So what we want to do right now is to follow up on the work that was started by the committee, to follow up on the survey questions about what the recreational needs are for the town of Littleton, for the residents of the town of Littleton. On the back of your agenda, we put a series of prompting questions. We're not going to go through all these questions tonight. Do some folks need agendas? Okay. They're in the back of the room. Marin, thank you very much. These are the kinds of things that come to mind to us when we start thinking about recreational needs. They are things that aren't in town, or things that are in town but there aren't enough of, or things that are in town but maybe they're not being utilized as much as you think they possibly could be. For instance, you got a great facility, you could use it for 20 different things, and you're constrained because of funding or staffing and to only use it for 10 things. So what we wanted to do is, use these as kind of the initial starter questions and hear what you have to say. And then in a few minutes, John Blaustein is going to take over, and we're going to talk about where you think these things might be able to be located in town. So to begin with, this is just what's missing, what are the recreational needs that you think exist in the town that are not yet being met, and who wants to be first? Now, I know Littleton, you're not shy.
Come on, that's why you're here, right?
Okay. There we go, I knew. There we go. Yes, ma'am.
I sit on the town board, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. My name is Anne Grace. And we have recently conducted a walkability survey and received a very strong positive response advocating for more sidewalks, more walking trails, safer trails. Am I supposed to be standing up at the microphone? I do apologize. Okay, so I'm very unfamiliar with this process. So just if you didn't hear me, I'm Anne Grace, and I'm from the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And we had a walkability survey that was filled out by, I think about 150, 170 members of the community. And everybody asked for more and safer walking trails.
Okay, thank you. So walking trails, sidewalks.
And then I'd like to add to that, because I'm on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory, we also want bike trails too.
Okay. Now, are you talking about on-road bike trails or off-road bike trails or both?
Both.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Okay, who's next? Okay, Cynthia, could you run the mic around as we need? Thank you.
My name is Joanne Deering, and I wish that we had more crosswalks in town. I find it really hard to walk around in our city center because it's very difficult to get across all the numbered routes that go through town. And sometimes I'm in Air, and I'm so impressed with Air. They have numerous crosswalks. In the way their main street is set up, there's parking on the side of the street, which narrows the road a little bit and slows the drivers down because they know where cars are parked, people are getting out of them. And, we used to have that kind of slant parking in front of Bob's Antiques, and now I guess there's still a few parking spots there, but that's the only place where, there's any sort of visual signal to the drivers that they should slow down. Okay. And I find that the speed limits in between the highways into the center of town are just too high, and we don't have any crosswalks.
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. will pass it down. Don?
Don McIver, Sustainability Committee, to build on the same theme, connectivity of the open spaces and also of the trails, in particular, trail to the bicycle walking trail to the train station, commuter rail station. That's something we're trying to do. Connectivity to other paths in other communities, like the Bruce Freeman Trail, which will go through Acton, connectivity to that. Also connectivity has been discussed to behind one of the streets to the back of a shopping center, the Donlands Shopping Center. So we need to connect some of these capabilities. Some is for walking, some is for bicycling, some of it may be more active recreation bicycling, some of it may be commuting, some of it may be just enjoyment.
Okay, all right, very good. You want to hand the mic back 2 rows.
And as we're taking notes, if we haven't correctly captured what you meant to say, just stop us and let us know.
Right. All right. So what we're doing, this is going to be trails and connectivity for here, and then we'll we have a separate color that we can use once we switch off of trails. How about we grab another? There's another pen over there. So we'll do.
Or then time.
All right. Sounds great. Yes, sir.
Okay, John Davis, Littleton Youth Baseball and Softball.
Thanks for coming.
We have a paucity of suitable fields for our youth sports. I think we need to improve those. What we do have, and we need to figure out how we can utilize our open space and add more. We also need more, or a rec building of some sort. We struggle in our youth some of our indoor youth sports and indoor areas for our children to play. And there's a difficulty in scheduling for multiple sports and indoor. So we lack those indoor facilities.
Okay, so let me ask you a question related to the fields. Is it lack of number of fields, or is it lack of number of fields that are adequately striped and maintained, but you physically have enough space if they were up and running?
No, it's both.
It's both.
It's both.
Okay. All right.
And,
Very
and
good.
not just about, I'm not bringing that from a baseball and softball perspective, but all the youth sports.
Okay.
It's both.
Okay. Predominantly used sports. There's not same circumstance for adult softball league.
I can't comment on that since
Okay.
I'm not
Well,
involved in the.
Maybe somebody else can talk about that. And then the indoor rec facility, any details on the types of things that you envisioned within an indoor rec facility?
So, indoor soccer, indoor baseball, maybe it has basketball courts, et cetera. And then inclusive of it, if you build a wish list, inclusive, say, of a community center of some sort. But from a youth, I come from it from a youth sports perspective.
Okay. Very good. Yes, sir. Can you hand the mic back?
Paul Tookmakian, Elder and Human Services Department. Adequate, going off his comments, adequate sports and recreation facilities for adults and especially seniors, something where they could have rec classes of some kinds or sports classes, larger, age-appropriate classes for older adults.
Okay. So that is for seniors as well as sort of active adults, softball type age folks?
Sure, right,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I'm a fan of bocce myself, so I understand. It's tough to find bocce courts sometimes. Can you hand the mic down the row there?
Thank you. Mitt Wanzer. When I think about the open space areas that we have around town, I'm interested to think how they're interconnected. I'm really aware that there's a number of properties on the wish list of open space purchases that have been talked about coming up for sale over 10 or 20 years, let's say. There's a major one for sale right now, the Cooper property, I understand. But knowing that the wish list includes many other properties, it's important to consider what are priorities in terms of purchasing. And so I would think that since open space land purchases are so expensive, taking care to think about which ones complement other properties that we already have, and either by proximity for the sake of wildlife or interconnectedness because they have a trail system or the potential for a trail system to be developed are things that I'm really interested in. So it's tempting to pounce on the first thing that's up for sale, but it might, for money purposes, block us out for a long period of time for making the next purchase. So I'd really be interested to know how to make sane choices about which one is next.
Okay.
That's a good comment, and that actually will be, I think, a little bit addressed in the next section here.
Right.
Joan will lead.
Okay. Thank you. Next. Yes, sir.
Rick Finley. I am very interested in the bicycle trails, shopping trails, and commuter trails, which can be recreational trails as well for bicycles. But the one thing that we don't have and have very few places to do it is a handicapped trail for older people and people that are handicapped. And I think this would be something that we should be pursuing as soon as we can. I mean, we have space in Long Lake Park, for example, where it could happen, but that's about the only place in town that's flat enough.
What was the name of the park?
Long Lake Park.
Okay. Bring that back up when Joan is talking about location-specific ideas, because we want to know that kind of information. All right, who's next? Pass the mic over there. Thank you, sir.
Hi, excuse me, Gary Austin, Park and Recreational Commissioner, and also involved with Littleton Youth Soccer. I think there's a big need for more fields in town, only because we complain a little bit that they're very deplorable, but that's because they're overused. You know, there's never a dry spell where a field doesn't get used. So with more space, we could rest more fields. The fields would be in better shape for our high school players, our youth players. So I definitely see a need for more field space in town.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Gentleman in blue in the back.
Mike Lynn, Athletic Director for the Public Schools. Agreeing with the theme of the two youth advocates, need more fields and take some of the existing fields and probably improve them. One of the things, the issues in Littleton is our fields are shared between youth and schools, so we don't have separate facilities for youth sports and separate for school. They're all shared for the most part, and so when the school teams are getting off of the fields, the youth kids are coming on, and we have such high participation at youth and school that it essentially equates to overuse of the fields, and many of the fields are in rough condition. We're also, last year, started a charge for a turf field facility, which on the school side of things, many of the schools that we compete against have turf fields, and it's become a real advantage for school systems that have turf fields because they can get on their fields earlier and they can use them when we cannot get on our grass fields.
Okay, thank you. This gentleman right here, if you pass it forward to Rose.
Roland Gibson. I wasn't clear on the slide that was earlier that showed, not that one, the one before that, yeah, that one. The third item, Recreation Center building, do we know the demographics? Was that from seniors, or do we have that breakdown? Or was that for young, for adolescents?
It was a very general question.
Okay, all right. 50 years ago when I moved to this town, Recreation Center for adolescents and seniors was on the agenda. We have neither 50 years later. So what I would like you to hear, this is a priority, and this is important. And my question is, once all this data gets collated, who determines what's a priority?
The town ultimately makes the decision as to what the priority is. It's the Open Space and Recreation Committee that then, puts the final plan together. That is brought to the selectmen, to town meeting, and it's up to the town to take action.
This is a very slippery slope. When I hear you say the town, I'm hearing citizens. When some people use the term town, it refers to a governing committee or a governing agent.
Well, I will say, as you know, ultimately the legislative body in the town is town meeting, and that is the people, and they're the ones who ultimately decide when you're going to spend large amounts of money.
That begs the question. It's not spending the money, it's what's a priority. That's a different question. And I'm trying to be clear.
Yep.
Because this is a source of consternation that has been ongoing in the town. And I don't know whether this is something the open space people will address, but some agent or agency needs to be mindful of the process. And I can't understate that. And this, I don't want to take a whole lot of time, but I want those of you who are working on this process to understand how to make it clear who determines priority. Is it a governing agency or is it the citizens? And I don't mean the citizens get to vote it up or down. I mean, long before that, someone makes the decision. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. And, perhaps at the end, we'll have a reaction from the members of the Open Space Committee related to that, because ultimately, they're the ones who will be putting the final plan together.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the gentleman in the back standing up there.
Kevin Hunt, Park and Recreation. And backing what Mike Lynn had said earlier and Gary Austin, I see a huge need in town for additional fields, potentially renovating some of the fields that we have in town. And I just, again, looking at the number of sports programs that we have, they're all very healthy. I think, right, from the youth programs, they do very well here in town with the youth programs leading up to the high school and acting as feeder programs for the high school. But unfortunately, as well as the teams here do, we play on deplorable fields, and they're getting worse and worse each year. We had looked at, again, a movement last year to potentially push for turf, especially for the high school, because the high school, even as it is built right now, I think even if it just had the high school athletics playing on those fields, doesn't have enough field space to adequately serve the high school athletics. You see that fields are being overutilized just at that level, and then you throw the youth sports on top of that, and the conditions of the fields go down even quicker. And it's gotten to a point now, again, where the high school's losing MIA tournament games because we have fields that cannot support that type of game. I also think that Alumni Field, which is the focal field, with the lights here in town, we have a nice lights, but the field itself there, the bleachers are falling apart. They've been in there for 50 years. The grade of that field it's not well graded, and it's a field that needs to be looked at as being renovated at a minimum, because I don't think it's honestly a safe field for us to be hosting events on, putting our children out there. So those are needs that I see in the the active recreation area.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you. Joe.
Yes, Joe Knox. To continue on about fields too, there's one part that I'd like to point out, that you had a slide up there that talked about the population, what's projected in the future. I see youth activity sports using fields increasing over and over. We have the ability, and a lot of people don't want to hear this, but there is a chance of population growing. There's a number of developments that are out there right now. And being in real estate, we are constantly having new families come in, looking to move to Littleton because of the facilities, because of the school system and so forth. So I only see the use of fields increasing as time goes on. And I just want to go back to that slide you had. That might be a little bit misleading, because I see our population growing a little bit faster. Not that necessarily that we wanted to, because we always desire a nice small town, but it is happening.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Next. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Cheryl Cowley Hollinger. To continue Joe's and Kevin's comments, we have sports teams to be very proud of in town. The U.S. report just came out listing Littleton as 13th in the state for school systems, ahead of Acton, Boxborough. We are seeing a lot of families moving into town. Right now we have such cramped field space that we frequently have 2 lacrosse or even 3 lacrosse teams trying to practice on the same field. And there are arguments about who should have what field when. We just don't have enough good field space. It's a real problem. And we should be proud of our sports teams. I mean, even in the soccer, I just came from a soccer meeting for Neshoba Cup. We have 4 teams going to the state finals for soccer, and we should be, and are in the finals for it, and we should be very proud of them, and we need to get field space to support this.
Okay. Yes, sir. Then I'm going to try to redirect, because I think there's a general consensus on fields. We want to get into what other things people might.
So I want
talk about.
to, Ed Mullen, Planning Board. I wanted to continue the theme that we're working on here as far as fields go.
Okay.
I'm newly elected to the Planning Board, and I can tell you that most of the votes came from me because I supported a turf initiative. So again, I know there's a lot of people that aren't here tonight that would support that, so I wanted to speak up on their behalf. And the other thing that I haven't heard any mention of, and this is my own personal hope, I'm a part of the Sudbury Conservation Commission hunting program, and we have no access to the conservation land as an outdoorsman, as a hunter. So I would like to see something like that also proposed and available to us. Thank you.
Okay. And then we'll make sure that we get that up there. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mitt Wanzer again. Hearing the discussion around fields, I know that that it was made clear last year that there was great need for field space, and thinking about thinking about the solution that was offered last year and how it failed at town meeting was unfortunate because some time went by, but as we come around to it again, and I'm glad it's sort of hosted in this sort of in the format of looking at the general needs of the community across all types of recreation. What comes to mind is that I would really like to see a facility that's developed that's new construction, that involves fields that are single purpose, that are well constructed. For instance, the fields at the high school are sort of an afterthought in a way to the construction of the high school itself, which was a new building, but I don't think the fields themselves had a lot of thought in terms of their design. So the turf quality there is really poor when compared to, for instance, Kerper Field, which is the best field around that I know of for grass, maybe compared to that at Devon's or even better. So what I'm getting at is that as we try to implement a solution to one thing, I would love it if it were solving a number of other problems. For instance, Rick mentioned walking trails. If we had a facility that was a real locus of activity, it would benefit the community to know that when you have a soccer game, you're going to that one place, the place where everybody else is going, because there's people walking their dogs there, there's the elderly on a paved surface for walking exercise, etc. And a place like 300 King Street just didn't fit that bill. It's too small of a postage stamp. It's great for a playground, but wouldn't it be great if the playground was proximal to the turf field, which was near the dog walking trail? You get my gist.
Okay, so want to make sure we capture that. So this is a sort of a one large facility. There's multiple uses, so that you can meet and greet everybody there, because you're going to be going there for various uses at one time.
If possible.
If possible.
I don't know if we have the space
Okay.
for that, and it should be close to town. It would be a shame to put some of these places in, the town owns a piece over here by the highway, let's stick it over there, or we own something here. It would be great if it was a real locus of activity.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Gentleman over here, and a few folks have been quiet. We want to make sure we give you the opportunity to speak if you want to.
Kevin Hunt again. Following up with what Mitt had said, one of the locations I've long said that we have here in town is I think it's Whitcomb Field down at the Russell Street Middle School, and that particular field, in my opinion, is something we should look at renovating and relocating the baseball field, because it's located so centrally in the center of the field. But it's also a field that is located close to that you have the track, but it also has access to trails. And in something like that, if we were to pursue a rec center or something in that direction, it may be an area that would lend itself to that, because you do have you have the ability to serve both passive and active recreation. And again, like I said, we've got a brand new track down there. It's also has alumni field there. It's a nice facility. Unfortunately, it was built in the late 60s and hasn't had a whole lot of TLC over the last 50 years. and it shows it. But again, we got a brand new middle school down there. We've just renovated, spent all this money on Russell Street School, built a brand new track, but in doing that, we ignored the parking lot, we ignored the fields, and that's a facility that I think we could address some of these needs of the town that we're talking about if we took a serious look at that.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask a question, then we'll go over here. So pass the mic over that way. A question that anybody can answer at any point tonight. The town I grew up in, we used the high school at night for pickup games of men's basketball. I don't know if there's a similar type of operation that goes on here, or if that is something that may be able to be of assistance, but at some point, somebody may want to address that. Yes?
Yes, my name is Mike Zeldin. This is more of a question, a technical question for your expertise. When you carry out your surveys, or when you advise other people to carry out surveys of needs, have you ever experienced where you've put a dollar figure? Because, for example, the turf has a dollar figure associated with it, which I think the people who've been looking at this know it very well. They're probably over-expertised now in turf. The number, I think, is around 2 million, correct? Somewhere around. I think, yeah. I'm just using this. So each of these requirements has a number associated with it. And so I have two questions. How do you advise a town to do a survey? And also, when you have priorities, it's also resource priorities. It's not, gee, I'd love to have a recreation center. There's a dollar figure associated with a recreation center, just as there is with a school, with or without parking lots, with or without appropriate fields. And do you ever advise a town to proceed in that direction?
That's a good question. Generally, one of the difficulties we encounter, and I think we discussed this when we were all meeting to talk about tonight, is you have to go from concept to a realistic number. If you float a number that's just kind of for purposes of putting out a survey, that number sometimes can get stuck in people's minds as that's how much it's going to cost. So if you had like 3 locations and you wanted to say, what would it take to put a first-class ball field on there, it would be very site-specific. So it would be very difficult to give people a number. You could possibly say, if you had $1 million to spend, how would you divvy up, your spending? So that might be a better way, because that gives you a little bit more sense of priority. Maybe one person would put it all in one facility, one person might put a little onto trails and a little towards the rec center, something like that. But the numbers can take on a life of their own, so you want some kind of like proxy way to ask people where their true priorities are. But it can be difficult to float a specific number.
I would also say that is a logical next step. There were no numbers put here on the survey, but you are absolutely right. A logical next step would be if the result of this meeting and the result of the work of the Open Space and Recreation Committee is that there is a lack of adequate fields, then you have several choices. As was noted, if you had a turf field, you could get on that earlier, you could use that more frequently, and it would perhaps stand up better. An alternative might be that you could add 4 additional grass fields, and you want to weigh those alternatives. If the 4 grass fields that you wanted to establish to meet the same level of need were part of an overall acquisition plan where you are acquiring a piece of property that is between 2 other pieces of conservation land and would allow you to have multiple benefits. Maybe you could have trails, maybe you would have watershed protection for well sites, maybe you would have a spot for fields, maybe you would have some other open space benefits. Those are the kinds of things you need to weigh. You can weigh the costs at that point. But I think what we're searching for tonight initially is what are the needs as identified by the town, so that you can then take that next step. You want to pass the mic up here? Thank you.
Hi, I just want to put in another plug for the so-called passive recreation, which in my life has not been really passive. It's included cycling, skiing, I guess, hiking, kayaking. It's by no means passive. I don't know why it's called passive recreation, but it does require facilities that don't need as much upkeep, money, changing of what's already there, and just looking at the data that we have from these couple of surveys, it looked to me like what people really want is more walking trails, more ways to get around, more ways to do biking, and it looked like the additional fields for play, although there might be a lot of people in this room who advocate that, the additional fields for play were kind of a lower priority. So I hope that we don't forget that there'd probably be a larger percentage of the population who could take advantage of, trails for walking, for bird watching, for cycling, for just getting back and forth to the train station, or being able to walk to the library instead of getting into the car, or going to the post office on foot or on your bike instead of driving there.
All right, thank you. Other folks who want to comment? Don, and then you'd like again. Okay, yes, sir.
Sure. Just to add on, obviously both are needed, active recreation and passive recreation. But with the passive recreation, as was mentioned, there are some areas that are contiguous. Once they're gone, and you don't have a chance to really reclaim it. And they also don't take any of the municipal services, so it actually does save money as opposed to having houses on some place that may not really be adequate to support them, marginal development. A lot of the land that's left is either because the agriculture is there and the farm's going out, or it's land that doesn't perk well because the whole town is running on septic systems, and it's best in some cases to have that, if it's well located, contiguous to other land, as open space, and so you avoid having marginal houses there that will cost more, and you also have the benefit of a contiguous open space. So that's something to keep in mind. It's really the characteristic of the land that often determines what should go there. And certainly for active recreation, I like the idea of the locus area, especially the area by the track. You go to Canadian towns where there's more top-down development. Typically you have the schools there and you have all the recreation there. Maybe that's because they have harsher winters and they need to focus a little bit better, but it does seem to make sense to have a locus around the school if possible, not only for school kids because things are nearby and they're acquainted with it, but it also just seems to make sense in general, perhaps less cost.
Thanks, Don. Gentleman in the back. Yes.
Thank you. What I was hearing in the question and comment over here relates to the issue that I was speaking to earlier. We have multiple committees like this in process. And I'm glad to see that someone is here from the Board of Selectmen. At some point, someone's going to have an agenda and dollar signs will be put beside items. That's where things get muddled in this town. And what I was hearing you say a while ago, when I heard the term town, at some point, the broad agenda, there would be value in the broad agenda being put before the town, before a money decision has to be made, before we're voting yes or no. Are you with me? And this is something I want the chair people to hear. So the town develops the vision, and the town is asked, okay, this is how much it's going to cost. Where do you want to spend your money? as opposed to a committee making that decision.
Well, not to speak for the committee, but I can't help myself. And I'm sure they'll have a response as well. But this is part of this process, is to gather feedback from the residents to make sure that the open space and recreation plan includes all of the elements that the folks in the town would like to see.
Understand. And what I want the leadership to hear is how we move that forward is important.
Okay, good. Thank you for coming out tonight.
So no one's answered your question about facilities for, say, pickup basketball. All right, so that is in play, and it does happen, but it is still takes second to the youth and the high school sports, as it should. So it is still difficult to get that. For the youth programs, for baseball, and softball, we have a difficult time getting indoor work in the preseason. Other towns that I've talked to do not have that difficulty. They have the facilities, and in fact, they hit the ground running when the fields are finally open and we are behind, and it's a struggle for us. And to be able to do it, we have to drive to Boxborough, because even the facility we have, the private facility in town, is small and crowded and used by AAU teams. So these are the things that are difficult. And so the facilities are there. The school facilities are there for use, but some of these things are down on the priority, and that's why we need to expand those. I believe we need to expand those. The other thing, so I mentioned the rec building that I am supportive, because the other thing that's, and maybe, I don't know if this is quite rec, but it's part of it, is meeting space. It is a struggle to find a meeting room in this town for a youth board or to have a meeting. Because, I mean, you can go to the town calendars and these things are filled. So these sorts of a rec building can also expand that. And that helps with planning these various youth programs. It helps with planning and growing those programs, or other committees and growing their programs. So these are things that I think also come into it.
All right, very good. Thank you. Other ideas? Joan just whispered in my ear a few minutes ago and said, nobody's said anything about playgrounds. Are playgrounds sufficient for the little tykes? Okay, it's not an issue. Nobody's said anything so far about the lake and how the lake is managed. The recreation facilities down there, is that adequate? I see a mic. Yes, sir.
I'm actually not going to respond to that. I think they probably are adequate. I raised kids in this town. We seem to have enough playgrounds to choose from, and if you wanted to go to the lake, you could go there. The slide that showed the survey slide, which has been, no, the one you just drawn. What was the total response to that slide? 100 people?
278 according to the chair of the committee.
200, those numbers, does that, I'm looking at, what's that? Okay. All right, so I wonder how much validity we want to put in to this survey. 278 people in the town is 9,000 people? That's a pretty small number of responses for a 9,000. So I'm not sure that's indicative of, as you can tell from this meeting, with everybody, the majority of people talking about sports fields. I'm not sure that's indicative of where the majority of people are in town. Yes.
There's a lot fewer than 278 people in this room. I would say that this meeting is more indicative than that data.
Duly noted, but 278 isn't very indicative of 9,000 people either, so.
Okay. Over here. Yes, can we pass the microphone over this way, please? No. I know you can be loud, but they need to hear it on TV. Thank you.
Jane Bracken, King Street, and I've been serving as the administrative assistant for the Open Space Implementation Committee over the last couple of years. And I can tell you that these folks, their survey went out with the water bills. Their survey was online. The survey was, and we did everything but tap dance on people's heads to try and get them to answer it. If you know of a way to get more people to answer it, I know they would love to hear it.
And it was handed out at town meeting as well, Don?
It was handed out at town meeting.
Okay.
But then, of course, there weren't many people at town meeting, so.
Okay.
Just for the record, I wasn't questioning how you administer it. I'm just saying the response was 278 people out of 9,000. I'm not questioning how it was administered or the work that was put into it.
That's not uncommon either.
No, I know. I deal with similar things, trying to keep it to do.
And that is one reason why we were asked to please conduct a meeting that would focus on recreation. So.
Okay. Unless there are other inputs at this point, I think I'm going to hand it over to Joan. We're going to start talking about locations where some of these might be able to be addressed at some point in the future. And again, this is, yes? Okay, hold on one second. We're going to pass the microphone that way. This is kind of like at an auction, going once, going twice, and there's always one more.
Sold. So maybe what I'm about to say kind of traverses both what we were doing, what we're headed into doing, because I definitely have feedback about the lake, but I kind of thought that might be location specific.
Okay.
So I was hang on, but
okay.
Maybe some of it is, maybe some of it isn't. I don't know. So, okay, a couple of things. So Melissa Hebert, Board of Selectmen, Master Plan Update Steering Committee, and Board of Directors on Long Lake Neighborhood Association. So all my feedback relates to the lake. So a couple of things. So you mentioned maintenance of the lake. The lake is absolutely beautiful, and everyone that maintains it, ranging from the highway department to even Andrew himself, does a fantastic job. I definitely think, though, there are things we could do to kind of beautify it, take care of maybe the docks a little bit better, or even there's like a ledge that overlooks the beach and then the lake itself, and it's very plain, and it'd be nice if we have maybe flowers or benches or just maybe something to make it a little bit more, even more beautiful than it already is. The second thing I'd like to say, playgrounds. So you mentioned that. Actually, I know that there's work going on right now to erect a new playground, so I think that would be lovely. So we may be okay there on this particular lake, and I can't speak for the other lakes, but so this is all related to Long Lake. And then lastly, the Long Lake Board of Directors, or Neighborhood Association Board of Directors, has been working on advocating for and implementing a walkable path all around the lake itself. So you were talking about where could we implement walking paths? Well, I think that would be an amazing place to locate one right now. And Andrew's been, instrumental in helping us research this and go out there with, and walk in the water and figure out what's going on. And basically, you can walk certain parts of the lake, but then you get stuck because of highly wooded areas, water that you have to traverse. So we would love to see, a path that even could go over water. The scenic beauty back there is unbelievable, and it's a gem in our town. So.
Okay.
That's my vote.
Thank you.
You bet.
And if I could digress for 1 second, I have to say, my grandmother was born in 1890, lived in Cambridge. In the 1990s, she wrote down her story of her life. When she was growing up in Cambridge, she would take the train to Littleton to go to the lake. I'm not sure it was Long Lake, but she wrote.
Of course it was.
She came to one of the lakes out in Littleton, which is just amazing to me.
It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
So I have a longer history here than even Keith knows. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Joan, and we'll take some additional notes.
Should be used, should not be used, how much time between big events on a field. Because before we start talking about, let's put fields on all these open lands, let's have an idea of what we really need for fields. I'd like to know, kind of have a general feeling for, we got 10 now, we need another 5. Or is it we have 10, we need another 20? What are we looking at? Because it's kind of, it's dark to me. I don't know what really the use is. I don't have, my son's really small. He's not using any of these fields. And honestly, I like the open land. I'd hate to see it all taken away for giant fields if we can improve what we have. Just point of order kind of thing. Before we get into, let's throw fields everywhere, what do we really have, and how well used are they, and how much use can they get before we have to redo stuff?
I would tend to defer to the folks who manage the fields, because I know that you can use a field a lot more if you've got certain active management of the field. If the field has been designed to have good drainage, you can get a lot more people out there because it can handle a lot more. If you've got active irrigation out there on the field, it can sustain a lot more use. But you know, it was really dependent. So I'd leave it to the gentleman who maintained it to make suggestions on that behalf.
Yeah, and since my wife's not here, I'll throw in a 300 King Street, Castle in the Trees. There's a big committee working on rebuilding it too, but it's ended its kind of existence there, so we're gonna have to rebuild that one eventually. So that might be nice to, if there's more assistance for that playground.
We have the problem in Littleton, it's a good problem to have. We have more participation in youth sports and high school sports than our fields can sustain. So is there a number that, I don't know that there's an exact number. I can tell you that most of our fields, the fields that you see listed on the slide there, most of them are used from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 8 o'clock at night. So if the school teams are out there from 3 to 5 or 6 o'clock, as soon as we're getting off the fields, then the youth teams are coming on to do their practices. So 3 to 8 Monday through Friday, and then oftentimes a better part of the day on Saturdays and Sundays in linear scheduled games with one game ending and another game coming on. So whatever that number is, it's safe to say we're well over it on our fields, and then it's just repeated usage. And again, it's a problem that's a good problem to have because there's so many families involved and so many youth athletes and so many scholastic athletes in Littleton.
And in my opinion, I don't think that, me personally, I don't want to speak for anybody else in the room, but with the fields, the need for more fields, I don't think it's simply just taking this undeveloped land that we have throughout town and turning it into fields, because I like open space too. And I think there has to be a smart approach. And, you know, so I'm not looking to say, I'd like to see a plan that comes up and addresses that we can, if we're going to add additional fields, there's a cost to maintaining those as well. And I don't want to see those, again, get overused. And that's why I think we looked at a broad approach last year of taking some of the existing facilities we have, which haven't been taken care of, and looking at other options. And as we said at the time, one was a turf field, which would accommodate many of the high school athletics and take some of the wear and tear off of these grass fields that we're utilizing every place, that we're overusing. Because again, you know, in Acton, for example, the turf fields are used from 8 o'clock in the morning till 12 o'clock at night. They're lit and they are used. You could never do that on a grass field. You need 20 grass fields to get that much use without destroying them. And so that's an approach we've looked at, and I think it's something that as a town, as a committee, that's something we should explore.
Okay, so what I want to do now, I just want to sort of set the stage about how we're going to approach these potential areas. So we were given a list by a town of potential, thank you, locations for either parcels that are already town owned or 2 private parcels, Cooper Farm being one and Fletcher being the other. And these were being put forth as potential locations for additional either recreational facilities or open space and recreational facilities. So the 2 aren't necessarily incompatible if you have a large enough parcel. And as Mark mentioned, you really have, or somebody mentioned, you really have to look at the characteristics of the land to figure out what makes the most sense there. But what we wanted to do tonight, and this gets back to not quite the dollar value or how you assign preferences through voting with your dollars. But what we want to do is end the evening with I don't know how many of you participated in meetings where you're given little dots and you put them up on the flip charts, and that's a way of voting or getting a visual sense of what potential recreational scenarios might have the most interest in, again, among the people here tonight, because that's the best you can always do. So we have I'll just walk through the list. We have land behind the police station. We have the Delaney Drive open space, White Street and Russell Street here, the Russell Street Elementary fields right here behind Town Hall, the Morgan property, the Cooper, Fletcher, Shaker Lane, Surrey Road, St. Anne's. Oh, those are the existing, sorry. So the ones in green here are the potential. And I've written the names up there. So what we want to know is, of the uses that were mentioned tonight, either fields, trails, recreation center, which is, I think, the three that really, we've heard a lot about. Which of these parcels lends themselves to developing those uses? And what we want to do is end the night with these, or another subset if we run out of space, of ideas for what might reasonably go, or what you would suggest would go on each of those properties, or could go. And then we're going to give you a certain number of dots and ask you to get up and vote with your dots on what preferences. It may be that they're all across the board. It may be that one or two really come up with a strong preference here. But it's just one way of getting some sense. In order to do that kind of dot voting, we have to make sure that on each of the properties, we've identified discrete items, because if somebody says, I want a recreation center, that's a discrete item. If somebody says, rec center and trails. So we may have to play around with a little bit of how things are shown, so that there's no confusion when you go, what you're putting your dot on. So what I'd like to do is just sort of ask people to suggest for these properties that we've listed here, and maybe sure.
Do we know what the square footage is of each of these fields?
The fields or these properties? We don't have that here tonight, but we could certainly, when we summarize tonight's comments, we could provide that, or that's probably something that the town has fairly readily available. But, yes.
Yeah, some of the fields are already owned by the town, but they're not the ideal location. They may be peripheral. Maybe it's good for practice, but they've been sort of ignored. I mean, I think you look, such as behind the police station, Delaney Drive, open space. Those were set aside actually for fields, and it may not be someone's ideal location. It's large enough, but it can accommodate something and relieve some of the pressure.
Right.
And I think that should be addressed.
Yeah, so any thoughts that you can give us on specifics? We're looking for very specific by these parcels.
What parcel is that?
There are two behind the police station.
Behind the police station? Police station.
Yeah, sorry, just abbreviating things here.
Sure, and I was mentioning there's, not ideal spaces, but there's sort of marginal, and they could be used for practice. Behind the police station's one, and Delaney Drive open space. In fact, I was on planning board was decided to set that aside for that explicit purpose, and it never was used.
Okay.
And also, it's worth pointing out there's a lot of fill and stuff that's leaving the point that's available to be used, and that's sort of a lost opportunity as well, and that will disappear. Those could be used there.
Okay. The other thing I noted when we put these on the map was they do tend to be in the northern part of town. Some on, all the potential ones are on the east here. And I heard a lot about sort of centralizing things, making a locus of activities. So it would be interesting to hear where you think that centralized, mega complex might go.
Yeah, and what was mentioned, just to summarize some of the comments, by where the track is, that's close to the school. I guess that's listed as Russell Street Middle School.
White Russell.
That's right, Russell Street White. And that's also a good opportunity because it's nearby. And
so that would be for more of the a larger complex of facilities?
I'm not going to talk to that. Other people can talk to
One field?
Yeah.
Okay, so for
But there's a
one
good
that-
opportunity that should be taken advantage
Okay.
of.
So this is not the central locus that...
No.
Well, there are
Is
other
this-
things there too, a track, the school, and, you know.
But you
there's
could
one nice
fit
field.
in, you think, one more field?
Right, but that is
Okay.
in close proximity
Mhm.
to a number of other
Right.
active recreation resources. So in some ways, that's very attractive, and that's been
Right.
mentioned by other
Okay. Back here?
Sorry, I'm just a little bit confused about what we're doing right now. Are we putting up the various options right now, and then we're going to vote on those options?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're not confused at all. Yeah.
For further clarification, we're going to, when we place a dot, we're voting for a specific type of recreation at a location. Is that going to be specified?
However we put these, however you articulate them as we transfer them
Excellent.
to these sheets.
Okay.
Yes, we do want to be as
most of these
specific.
are sort of real estate names, boom, 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 we
Right.
might have something that's an other category because
Yeah.
if we're talking about a multifunction room or gym space, it might not fit what's shown on the map.
Okay, yeah, I should mention that we're going to add, we can add additional locations that aren't, or comments. So if it's beyond one, if it doesn't fit into one of these, tell us where you think something might go.
As far as looking for a centrally location field to have multiple things, I think the Cooper property would be perfect for that. I also think the Fletcher property, they're across the street from each other, basically. So now you can have a huge complex of walking trails, playing fields, parking, which is always key. We don't build enough parking when we build fields or anything in town. The Morgan property is another location, already backs up to the Proudy field, trails. So that would be a good location for fields, and parents are dropping their kids off for practice. They could take a hike up into the woods there, the Proudy property.
Okay, and that you said that was part of the Fletcher?
No,
What's the next-
Proudy, Morgan is
Oh,
one.
okay, Morgan. Over here?
Morgan, yeah. It
Over
butts
here?
up to, on your left, it butts up to the Proudy woods already. If we're looking for central locations to
No,
try to
Morgan, right over here.
make multi-use out of these spaces, with the white field, the white Russell Street, you're only going to get one additional field in there.
Okay.
Does it help? Absolutely. Same
One
with the
more
police station, but now you're starting to single locations around town.
Sure.
If the people want a central location, those three properties that the town doesn't even own two of them, who knows what could happen.
Okay, can you pass the mic back?
Another central location is just here at Town Hall. We have the fields behind us, and we have the tennis courts, and there are additional lands here that abut the middle school property, so that could be used in conjunction.
All right, that would
for
be
a
separate
central
because that's
location.
already owned here. So Cynthia's got that.
The Cooper property has great space out front for open space. It has some very nice level space in the back. That would be great fields. And it has the ability to connect those with trails. It has pretty much everything that you would want with doing some kind
Okay.
of complex like that.
So you would, what's already up there would capture what your thoughts are? What's already been written pretty much captures that? Great. Okay.
Can't read it, it says multiple fields, multiple uses, trails, etc. The trails can include sites, include parking, could be the site of major facilities. Does that work, or would it need to be amended?
No, I think you're saying that captures what you were trying to say. Yeah.
Open space too, right?
Should say open space. Open
Oh,
space too.
Yep, right out front, very visible. Lovely open space.
Yeah, and there are different types of soils there, and one of the things that the town did recently was acquire Church Meadows contiguous to it as prime agricultural land, as contiguous, and the idea was that there could be farming also on that area. And so the connectivity aspect of it is prime agriculture. In fact, it was suggested farming and scenic views in the front and back, a sports field. That would be perhaps the right layout, using the advantages of
the town's investment already in Church Meadows and what the soil has to offer.
Okay, so you want to add a separate line item for agriculture?
In front, and then that's been an ongoing theme. It's it's a type of conservation, type of open space. So prime agricultural land in front, contiguous to the Church Meadows town-owned agricultural land next to it.
I'd like to add that in just about any place where you put a thing, you can also put a trail. And I don't see that they do not exclude one another. And we have very few facilities for handicapped accessible trails. And so if there are any flat spaces that are going to be developed into fields of any kind, that would be something to add. That doesn't matter which one you put it on, or all of them.
Okay, so that would be a separate, all-inclusive handicap trail concept, which will also be available for you to put your dot on.
And as we all are going to age, apparently.
You think so?
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, in the back?
Addressing and looking at the selections that you've given us up there, I really see it. I mean, I'm a lifelong resident of Littleton. I work for the town, and I know a lot of these areas very well. And I look at it as it comes down to a couple of locations that really serve the purpose. Delaney Drive, you might get a field in there. Out behind the track at the high school, you might get a field in there. But are they prime locations? No. Is that really where we want to spend our money to create athletic fields? I don't think so, because you're going to be repeating that. You can't create a facility. You might create a field. And if that's what we want to do, that right now it's open space. It may not be a huge parcel, but I just don't know that that's where we want to go. I look at Cooper property, we don't own it, and yes, it does. You can see just by the list that we've put together, it serves a lot of purposes. It meets a lot of different needs for the people, at least in this room, some of the things that we're looking for. The big item there is we don't own it. To me, I look at the Morgan property, we own that right now, and it also could meet a lot of different needs. It does have trails out there right now. I get the sense from some of the people already in the room that like that we own it, and they don't want to see that change, and I understand that. But it is also an area that we should look to say that right now that is trails, and it's there. That's a potential that could also be very similar to what we're listing there on Cooper. Again, I would love if somebody wants to come up with money and buy Cooper, I'm all for it. I just don't know if the town has that money available.
So you would say that Morgan could hold more?
I think Morgan offers many of the same.
Options.
It's a big site. It's a nice. Okay. It's another large parcel. But I see those two as being the primary locations that can serve a lot of different purposes. Surrey, that location, that's within a neighborhood. It's extremely ledgy up there. I don't know what you can do up there for athletic fields.
Okay.
I know that it was slated for an athletic field, but I think you'd be doing an awful lot of blasting. And one other note.
Ledgy.
Sorry, yeah, very ledgy. One other note on the material that's coming out of the point, that's some of the worst material you could ever put underneath an athletic field. It's all clay.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think we'd want it, if we're really looking to create fields, that's not what you want to put there.
Okay.
So one thing I haven't seen, and it's been a little bit of a discussion earlier, but renovation and repair of existing. And again, I don't know if it fits this, and it's not something that's up there, but it is existing fields. Is the ball fields at Shaker Lane School? There's 3 ball fields there. It's a huge amount of land. It strikes me that there's room for more. Now, parking would be an issue, but some redo of some of those facilities may help address some of those
capturing
needs.
that up.
Plus,
there,
one of those fields drains incredibly poorly, so if it's any rain, we can't use it for a couple days and we're stuck. So, I think there's opportunities for some renovation of the existing fields again. I want to make sure we capture it.
Okay, we got right up there. In the back, Mike.
I'm a little concerned if we're moving soon to a vote, so to speak, with the dots. The feeling that I'm getting, and I want to participate on this, and I'm intensely interested in fields, but I have other priorities too, personally and as a member of a committee. My concern is that for one, that the map situation, we're only looking at real estate. I made a comment of that before. So that leaves out of the discussion some types and categories of recreation. So when I actually physically place my my sticker, I want the committee to hear this more than anybody. It feels like to me that most effectively my input is on fields, and so I've heard the discussion, and when I put the sticker on there, I don't know how many I'll get, so to speak, but I think this is putting a lot of effort into one category of recreation. I don't see another way for my voice to be heard after the meeting's done.
Do other people want to see some of, like, the community center, bike trails as general categories so that you can put your dot on there as well? Because we can create that additional list so that you're not only talking real estate. Well, yeah, it's looking at locations and what could go. So if somebody, for instance, has an idea where a recreation center should go, we can put it there. We could also leave it as a separate item so that you can vote for that. Yes.
So on the survey, although I know it didn't have a huge number of residents who participated in the survey, the top two items on that survey were bike trails and walking trails. And these specific, I think this is just going off what you're saying, is they're not so much real estate center. I mean, they can be used for that, but you don't want just, if I put a trail going through the Cooper Field, that's not a great use of that real estate. However, having a bike trail that connects the center of town all the way out to the Cooper Field is great, but I don't really see a way to have that input on the
well, actually, you know, if people want to take a stab at drawing some things on the map as well to capture some of your other thoughts with, you know, lines, maybe things that you want to connect, we could take a few minutes and do that as well. That's another way. I just want to make sure people don't think that once you put your dot on there, that's the end all and be all, and it's a smaller sample than the 270 who responded to the survey. This is just another way of getting the conversation going and capturing what was discussed tonight. But it doesn't mean that it's a vote, as in electing somebody, or that there aren't other opinions. It's just one way to walk away from, you know, with an idea of what the people who came out tonight, and certainly appreciate your coming out tonight, what was discussed. And then that can be, perhaps when we're wrapping up, Keith can talk about, or Andrew, how you want to take this, and do you want to put it up on the website? Do you want to, you know, get it out to the community and have them also react? Yeah, obviously they won't have the benefit of having been here tonight, but they may have comments and may spur some additional conversation. So that's certainly, but it's always, you know, it's just a snapshot of who came tonight, what was discussed. It doesn't mean that something that gets, you know, 10 votes gets into the plan and something that gets 2 doesn't. It doesn't work that way. It's not like we're electing a president or something. So just wanted to, you know, make sure that people aren't too hesitant about, you know, the voting process. Okay.
Hi, Rick Finley again. I chaired the Cooper Committee, which looked into ways of using the Cooper Farm several years ago. And I believe one of the things that we worked on was that we try to preserve the agricultural sense of the town on the street level and bring the playing fields down towards the bottom so that they don't impact the view that we traditionally have come to appreciate. Over the years that followed, we also sort of applied that same idea to the use of the Morgan property, and I think that had the general approval of all the different parties in town, those that, you know, appreciate open space, as well as decent playing fields and numbers of playing fields. So I would just, basically what I'm saying is I think we should try to work on maintaining town character. Let's not put playing fields right on our main roads when we have the opportunity to place them
Okay, well,
back.
I think we can capture that as just a general comment, maybe on one of the existing charts, or if you just want to add it there. People, I mean, if it's important enough.
Joan,
Yes.
a question.
Yes.
We've got two separate ideas, but they don't necessarily need to be separate, because it seems to me that the concept of preserving the front lands and agriculture could still go with this.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And if it's the pleasure of you all, we could just eliminate the line between those.
Yeah, I think that works. I mean, I think what we're really trying to get at is, obviously, we're not doing a master plan for the Cooper property tonight. Or trying to identify all the potential, but we're really trying to also weed out the ones that maybe just really don't make the cut, or don't really lend themselves to more than just a field, and if that's not what you want to accomplish. So I think, if we take that line out, but again, if you vote for that, within that, there could be infinite possibilities of how you develop or don't develop that site. I guess, Keith, if you want to mention the July 13th meeting, would that be?
I just have one quick comment.
Just since we're talking about the Cooper property, we don't need to determine the outcome of that property tonight. The Board of Selectmen is hosting a public hearing on Monday, July 13th, when we'll be reviewing a particular proposal that's been submitted by the seller for the proposed use of that property, and we're looking to get some feedback to them and have the town be able to tell us what their thoughts are about the future use of that property, and whether or not we're interested in allowing that proposal to go through in the current or some modified form, or whether we would want to bring the matter of acquiring the property for $1.8 million forward to a town meeting. So we will have plenty of time to deal with that issue this summer. In fact, July and August or would be set aside for the Board of Selectmen to begin and then continue a public hearing on that property, hopefully with the decision at the end of the summer.
I just have a comment about the Morgan property, and not to take anything away from it, just a precaution that I know that it's been looked at for several different uses. It's been looked at for the fire department. It's been looked at for the library, and I know a factor's been looked at as far as dollars is concerned, just to get into the property. So think about what it's going to cost to get into that property as far as making it usable.
Yeah, maybe just throw some dollar signs up there for with access next to it. So it's not really an item we're voting on, but it's something that we need to know about, is what you're saying. Okay. So we've got, some idea that Cooper could fulfill a lot of needs and still, do the agricultural preservation. Nobody said anything about Sanderson. Anybody want to give me any thoughts on that?
Where is that? I know where Sanderson property is, but how much of it is available?
Oh, Sanderson is off. Why did I write down?
Yeah, aren't they building houses there?
Sorry. Sorry, that one was developed or has a subdivision plan on, as I understand. Okay, my error.
If you want to see bike lanes on the roads, where do you put your sticker?
Well, bike walking trails on and off road, do you want to be able to react to those separately?
Well, yes, because off-road would require to be on a site, whereas
Right.
the roads we currently have, and that's paint.
Okay, so we can have two separate thoughts on that, off-road and on-road. Great, thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned Sanderson and the the part that has the plans on it has a wetland and an esker, so that would not be quite appropriate. And it's supposed to have a conservation restriction as well, which strangely was given to the town, not the Conservation Commission. On the other side of the Sanderson Road, you do have fields, but it's also a water aquifer district. So the water department, when approached, they said, well, if you're going to have anything there, you would need a synthetic turf field. So right away, that's $2 million on top of whatever else. So I think that's just completely off the board, both sides.
Great, thank you. Nope. Back.
I just have one quick question. You've listed all these, everyone's listed all these great ideas, things that might come. Is a vote actually necessary tonight? Or could you just take this information and compile it and get it out to the townspeople? We have such a small sample right here.
Yeah,
but I'm only speaking for myself. Other people might want to make that vote.
We can certainly leave that up to you. We frequently do this because actually, I mean, in some instances, we have a lot of smaller groups sitting and talking and developing their own charts, and then we try to pull everybody back together. But it's if you think it will be useful to you, then we'll go ahead and do it. And if not, we certainly can, we will transcribe all these charts and make it available to Keith, and whatever works for you. We have no vested interest in voting.
Yeah, and we'd also be having this program broadcast on LCTV. It will also be available on demand. I think that we could probably do a good deal of outreach, watch the show. I guess I'll have to consult with our technical wizards to see if they can flash something off at if at an appropriate time, like on YouTube or something. If you like what you see, press now. We can sort through what some of those technical options are, but certainly we can get it posted onto the website and give an opportunity to get feedback, and we'd be happy to work on that to reach, since we've got a package of information now that we can get out to people, and then maybe we can come up with a more methodical way for getting input back. So happy to work on that.
Okay, so am I hearing no dot voting? No? Okay, anybody desperately want to vote?
It'd be hard to tell what it meant.
Sure.
Because it's actually apples and oranges. There are a lot of, we were getting sort of a sense, which might be good. It might be a beginning of that. I think voting is...
All right, so I spent 15 minutes today cutting dots for nothing? That's, okay, I still get paid.
Now you know how the town clerk feels when she's ready for a counted vote on a borrowing issue, and then we do unanimous vote. So.
Okay.
I just have a question. I think that a lot of people have said, and I certainly agree, it would be nice to have a place where there is a facility for indoor, and there's plenty of room around it, and it's a meeting point for the town. Is the lands, or are the lands around the high school, middle school, sufficient to do something like that?
Well, there may be somebody here who knows that complex better, but basically, could you put a recreation center, like we've been hearing about, on that property? Plus some fields.
Another possibility, and I'm sure other people know better about this than I do, but one of the churches has actually joined together, parish with one in another town, and it's a top-down type religion as far as real estate, and you never know if that's going to be excess. If that were, that is a building that could be reused and does have a field and back that is being used. So things can happen, and this is a case of something that may be accessed, and bears watching.
Okay. And do you want to name the...
Sure. I have no connection to the Church of St. Anne's.
Okay.
But it has a large parking lot, has a field there, and one never knows what top-down administrators do when they try to join things together.
Okay,
I know the members in the audience of that church, and they can probably speak better to that.
All right, so St. Anne's could be a potential location.
It's hard to say.
Right.
It's a possibility.
If things came into play that way for a potential recreation center. Okay. Okay, we definitely have time for more comments. We're here to just to listen. So if there anything that we haven't covered tonight that you think would be useful for us to know?
Just one more thought. I visited a town in Maine in the winter and discovered, I think it was maybe it was a YMCA, they had an indoor walking track that the old people in the town used. And we have a lot of snow here, and it carries on for quite a few months. And that seems like a thought that hasn't been surfaced at this point. So if you end up with an indoor recreation center, that would be something to consider.
And you don't have your own wall here, do you? Yeah, or Salmon Pond or something like that. Or Montreal, okay, right, because they have that vast underground shopping network. Yes.
I just had a question. I believe a couple years ago the town looked at some sort of relationship with what used to be the Wang Country Club in Groton, because I know swimming was one of the things that was on that survey. Has that idea died? Does anybody know?
I know they've had a lot of problems with the finances of it, and people like saving and protecting it. I think it's ongoing, but finances have been a major issue. But even towns like Concord have put up a swimming club. They have a hard time with finances on that too. A lot of these facilities are hard to maintain financially, et cetera.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard too many successful swimming facilities that communities are glad to have undertaken.
Yeah, Joan, just on the Groton, we're talking about the Groton Country Club, that the Park and Rec department here was approached by the town of Groton a couple of years ago to see whether we could manage their facility for them, and it wasn't something that we wanted to prioritize our time on, and it really ended up not being something that was in Groton's best interest either, but that was explored.
Okay.
There were discussions.
Thanks.
Okay, any last thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard having facilities farther afield. We need transportation, but I was on the Devon's Reuse Committee, and they're actually one of the ideal uses, the huge parade ground going to the soccer league, and a lot of soccer groups play there. I've seen elsewhere Mass Development has leased it for some other active recreation. I wonder if someone looks at the cost of developing something versus transporting people someplace, if that would make sense. And that's a place with a lot of capability, even today. I mean, it's a lot of land there.
Great, so Cynthia's capturing that thought. Just one other question for you. Are there any sort of public-private partnerships with any of your large businesses in town that you might be moving forward with or might have some interest in?
Well, we're always in communication with our businesses on ways that they can help us, and recreation is sort of at the top of things with existing businesses and some new businesses that are moving in. That may help us when it comes time to needing resources to do something, but we haven't figured out, where you would put the facility that you want, and it's so obvious, and that someone's going to give us the land, and that all the pieces are not quite in place yet. But.
Okay, are people winding down here? Or we have any more comments? It's been a great conversation. I think we've really covered a lot of ground. We would be happy to take any more comments, maybe channel them through Keith, so you could take a look at them and send them on to us. And you want to talk a little bit about next steps?
Sure. Thanks very much to Joan and Cynthia and Tanya and Mark tonight coming out, and thanks to all of you for participating as well. That we had designed this as a means of getting more public information, getting more information out. I think it's a great suggestion that we take what we've learned tonight, the ideas that we have, and find a way to get that out to the community for some feedback. So we shall work on that. We will be convening another facilitated session in due course. We'll have to work out exactly when that is, but I think that could be a focal point for the information, the input that we will be soliciting from our community members between now and then, and bring the results forward and have a final discussion at our next session. Information from tonight will be available online as soon as it's in ready form. Mark isn't doing us live, but I'm sure it'll be up before too long. I want to thank Mark and Kirby from LCTV for being here as well, and to thank again all of you for participating in this important meeting about Littleton's future. Thanks very much.